A bubbly wave from a small girl at a packed shopping mall looked like just nothing out of the ordinary. Until the officer's trained eyes noticed something horribly out of place. In a flash, yelled danger, what appeared to be a harmless instant would become a race against the clock. A silent scream for help behind a child's smile. It was just a typical afternoon within one of the busy city malls. Talked, kids darted by fountains, and the aroma of coffee and pretzels lingered in the air. Officer Daniels, one of the friendly local policemen who cut his figure in the crowds with a quiet presence and quick wit, was making his standard rounds. Sweeping crowds, greeting shoppers, observing with a keen eye but going unnoticed. Then, in the commotion and bustle, a small movement caught his eye. Probably 7 or 8 years old. Stood with a tall man by the food court. She gazed at Daniels and waved a small, uncertain wave. It was nothing unusual, uniformed officers all the time. But this wave was different. It wasn't goofy or spontaneous. Her fingers trembled slightly. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Daniels, trained to read subtle cues, felt a twinge of unease. Something about her expression lingered in his mind, as though she wanted to say something but couldn't. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the man beside her, then back to the officer. The man's response confirmed Daniels's suspicion. He did not wave, did not smile, did not even recognize the girl's greeting. Instead, he clenched his hand on her shoulder and said something in her ear that made her look down at once. That moment of a second, what had appeared to be a harmless instant became a silent warning. Daniels didn't have the slightest idea what was wrong yet. But one thing he was certain of: something was. His time on the force had learned him that instincts don't lie, and sometimes the smallest action can be a call for aid. That casual, quivering wave would eventually unravel a secret much more sinister than anyone surrounding could possibly have foreseen. Officer Daniels had witnessed a lot of things during his time on the force. Fear, guilt, desperation. But nothing yelled more than the eyes. They were the one thing that people couldn't hide, not even kids. Standing from just a few feet away, watching, the girl's face said it all that her voice couldn't. Her mouth attempted to curve into a smile, but her eyes were shaking basins of terror, flicking across the man sitting next to her and then rapidly away, as though she was scared to be discovered staring elsewhere. The body language of the man was domineering. A hand on the shoulder of the child, the other holding a shopping bag in stiff tension. He wasn't waiting or window shopping, he was guarding something. Daniels noted how the man unconsciously shifted his body, shielding the girl from sight each time she attempted to move. It was a gesture Daniels had learned in 1,000 training exercises on child safety and kidnapping prevention. The gesture of dominance, not protection. The girl's attire was not consistent with the man's style. Scuffed shoes, slightly disheveled hair, faded teddy bear being held. All details that jarred with the man's clean jacket and agitated air. Daniels's instincts were screaming louder now. Think about a story he had read a few days ago. A missing girl, in a suburb just down the road, last reported wearing a blue sweater. The same sweater the little girl was now wearing. Daniels felt his heart pound in his chest. He understood that he had to be cautious. A misplaced step could harm her more. So instead of moving towards them, he controlled his breathing and observed each and every detail. The face of the girl, the movements of the man, the pattern of the crowd. For sometimes, before you can rescue someone, you need to see them really. And in her terror-stricken eyes, he saw a plea for rescue. Each officer is taught to believe the facts. The concrete, verifiable evidence that constructs an argument. But Officer Daniels had discovered through years of service that sometimes it isn't reason that saves lives. It's instinct. That nagging little voice at the back of your head that says, something isn't right. As he saw the man and the small girl vanish into the crowd of shopping mall patrons, that voice boomed louder. Daniels felt it building up inside him. That unmistakable constriction of intuition compelling him to do something. He went over every minute detail in his mind: the shaking hand of the girl, the anxious look, the domineering grip. None of it fit the scene of a typical father-daughter day out. Nevertheless, a tiny corner of him wavered. What if he was mistaken? What if he made a scene and humiliated an innocent man? But then he recalled all those tales he'd read. The ones in which folks disregarded their instincts and lived to regret it for the rest of their lives. Better to be a fool than to keep quiet and lose a life, his former police mentor would always say. The choice came to him like a shock of clarity. Daniels squared his shoulders, tucked in his radio, tracking the couple from a distance. He didn't run. He didn't intervene. He watched, all his senses on high gear. The man's hold seemed to clamp the instant he saw Daniels behind him. A little, nearly unnoticed response that only stoked the officer's certainty. This was no accident. This was a troubled child. Daniels' heart rate increased, but his footsteps didn't falter. The time for second guessing was over. His gut had told him, and now he needed to respond. Quickly, but wisely. Because sometimes one gut instinct is all the difference between locating someone or losing them forever. Officer Daniels knew he couldn't afford to make a mistake. Second mattered. Every movement had to be calculated. The man holding the girl's hand was moving faster now, his head twitching slightly as if sensing danger behind him. Daniel's instinct screamed louder, "He knows I'm watching." Silently, Daniels softly radioed into his radio, "Possible kidnapping, north side of the mall, by the food court. Require backup." His voice was steady, but his heart was racing like a drum. The man hastened his stride, hurrying the small girl through the growing throng. Her little legs barely able to keep pace. And Daniels noticed. The instant that sealed it all. A true father wouldn't pull his daughter like that. He'd slow down, reassure her, assist her to her feet. This guy merely pulled her along, glancing toward the doors. Daniels took off in a run, then a sprint. "Sir, halt right there!" he ordered, through the crowded mall. Heads swiveled. Shoppers froze in mid-stride. The guy glanced over his shoulder, and took off. The pursuit erupted into pandemonium. People dodged out of the way as Daniels ran after the suspect, dodging around surprised shoppers and dropped bags. The little girl shrieked, her high-pitched cry piercing the air. "Help me!" That was all, no more uncertainty. Daniels charged ahead with every last ounce of energy. The man ran past a storefront display, attempting to shake him off down a side alley, but years of training took over. Daniels countered his action, tackled him hard by a service hallway, and pinned him in a few seconds. Security guards from the mall arrived. The man was handcuffed, still screaming explanations. But the girl held onto Daniels, trembling. At that moment, in the chaos and din, Daniels understood one thing with absolute certainty. Merely been correct. It had preserved a life. When the suspect was finally subdued, the chaos slowly faded into a heavy silence. Loud chatter dimmed as curious onlookers gathered from a distance, whispering and pointing. Officer Daniels knelt beside the trembling girl, his voice low and calm. "You're safe now. What's your name?" She sniffled, clutching the sleeve of his uniform like a lifeline. "Lily," she whispered. "He's not my daddy." The words struck Daniels like a thunderbolt. Anxiety, the intuition, the pursuit. Everything clicked now. He nodded to reassure her, attempting to conceal the tempest within him. "It's okay, Lily. You did so good. You're safe now." Paramedics and support officers were there in minutes. The man, who seconds earlier had been a typical, frustrated parent, was now handcuffed and scowling. Daniels loomed over him, his jaw clenched. "Who you are?" he asked. The suspect's answer was a sneer. "You've got the wrong guy." But when Daniels patted him down, the facts spilled out. No ID. No wallet, just a burner cell phone and a picture. Lily's school photo. Creased and frayed. The kind that only someone keeping an eye on her for a while would possess. When one of the detectives on the scene corroborated Daniels' worst suspicion, there had been a kidnapping warning for a girl of Lily's appearance just hours before. Her mother was at the police station, and frightened. As Daniels absorbed the news, he looked at Lily, tiny, terrified, but alive. That single fact he'd observed before, a flicker of fear in her eyes, had been the strand that unraveled a horror. Been another tragic headline was now one of survival. Because one girl waved, and one officer listened. The following morning, the atmosphere at the police station was heavy with emotion and tension. Officer Daniels was at the entrance, his uniform creased from the restless night spent the previous evening. He had remained with Lily every step of the way. The statement, the medical examination, the gentle spoken detectives. to ensure she never felt abandoned. When the lobby door opened, inside, her face colorless and smeared with tears. "Lily!" she exclaimed, her voice shaking. The noise pierced the still room like a bell. Lily spun around. Her eyes went wide, and the next moment, she was flying, her little feet slapping on the tile flooring until she ran into her mother's arms. The woman fell to her knees, holding her daughter as if she would never release her again. The room was silent. Even the officers averted their eyes, gulping down the lump in their throats. There was something holy in the instant. The naked, wordless reunion of two hearts that had almost been ripped asunder. Lily's mother continued to whisper, "I thought I'd lost you, baby. I thought I'd lost you." Or Daniels took a step back, his chest constricted. For all the perils he had encountered during his time on the force, nothing was like this. Seeing a family sew itself back together after nearly being torn apart. He saw the thanks in the mother's eyes when at last she looked up at him. She mouthed, "Thank you." He didn't require a medal, or a headline, or clapping. That one instant, the hug, the crying, the love renewed, was priceless compared to any honor. While Lily and her mother hugged, Daniels made a silent promise to himself that he would no longer disregard that little voice within. The one that says you when something is wrong. Because at times, listening can keep a life alive. Officer Daniels waited alone in his patrol car, stationed under the gentle curve of a streetlight that evening. The city sang a quiet song around him. The distant rumble of cars, calling dimly somewhere along the track. But his mind wasn't in the here and now. His mind was at the mall, reliving every moment that had brought Lily to safety. He considered how easily he could have blown it. How one small choice had made all the difference. If he hadn't gone down that corridor, if he hadn't seen the flash of fear on the little girl's face, if he hadn't listened to his instincts, she could still be missing. He clenched the steering wheel and felt a shiver run deep up his spine. Instinct, he breathed softly. It wasn't police training or experience. It was something within him. Something almost godly. Daniels recalled his deceased father, a fellow officer, who used to say to him, "Son, sometimes God doesn't shout. He whispers. You just have to be listening." That whisper, that soft push to do something when reason dictates one weight, had been what had saved Lily's life. He glanced in the rearview mirror at the reflection of his badge. The same badge that had tended to weigh him down with responsibility, now sparkled with purpose. For the first time in months, didn't feel tired or disillusioned with the world. He felt rejuvenated. In his years of service, he had seen the worst in people: cruelty, lies, neglect. But today, he had witnessed something pure: the power of connection between strangers, the quiet magic of doing the right thing when no one's watching. As the night deepened, Daniels whispered softly, "We're all where we're meant to be. Just to help someone find their way home." The next morning, Officer Daniels woke to find his phone buzzing non-stop. At first, it was another early shift alert, but then he saw the notifications. Hundreds of them. Social media posts, news headlines, and even text messages from colleagues all saying the same thing. "You're trending." Someone at the mall had captured the moment he reunited Lily with her mother. The officer kneeling down to comfort the terrified little girl, the mother collapsing into tears of relief, and the onlookers clapping softly through their own tears. The video had been posted online with a caption that read, "This officer didn't just do his job, he listened to his heart." In hours, it was viewed by millions. Opinions flooded in from all over the globe, faith in humanity restored. Reminds me of why empathy still matters. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear badges. Daniels read through the deluge of messages, abashed, done it for publicity. But the tale had struck something deeper in others. A desire to feel that compassion still lived in the ordinary world. News media soon trailed behind. They asked for interviews, comments, sound bites. But asked for an explanation of what he did, Daniels merely replied, "It wasn't me. It was a little girl who thought someone would listen." That one simple sentence resonated. Because in a world where individuals tend to pass by each other, Lily's little wave, an act of uncomplicated trust, had reminded millions of the importance of connection. On social media, individuals started utilizing the hashtag #TheWaveOfHope and posting accounts of kindness and awareness generated from the occurrence. It was no longer just a viral narrative. It was now a movement. Days after the rescue, Officer Daniels was given a handwritten note at the station, an unusual occurrence in a world where texts and emails reign supreme. The envelope was tiny, pale blue, precisely addressed in a child's scribble. There was a drawing inside. A stick figure cop standing next to a beaming little girl holding a balloon. At the top, in crayon, were the words, "For seeing me." Along with it came a brief note from Lily's mother. Her words shook with feeling. "No medals for what you did. Only a mother's thankfulness that her baby is back home alive. You didn't save Lily alone. You saved me as well. Because now I know that there are still others who care, who look beyond appearances." Officer Daniels sat at his desk for a long time, looking at that picture. The crayon lines were crooked, the colors streaky. But to him, it was more precious than any medal. A few days afterward, the department held a small ceremony to commemorate Daniels. Lily and her mother came, shyly standing beside him as the captain read about his bravery and instinct. But when the admiration faded, approached the microphone. "I waved because I thought police officers are supposed to assist." She spoke quietly. And he did. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Even the toughest officers wiped away quiet tears. After the ceremony, Daniels crouched to Lily's level and said, "You were brave too. Don't ever forget that." Lily smiled and whispered, "You listened when no one else did." In that instant, Daniels realized that heroism wasn't about power or authority. It was about presence. Sometimes, the greatest act of courage is simply noticing. Months went by since that fateful day at the mall, but the tale of Officer Daniels and Lily did not fade away. From the headlines, from memory, definitely not from Daniels' heart. Every time he dressed up in his uniform, he was reminded of the power of awareness, compassion, and human connection. One afternoon, while visiting a local school for a safety talk, Daniels spotted Lily again. She was sitting in the front row, smiling from ear to ear. When he called for questions, her small hand shot up. "Officer Daniels," she asked sweetly, "are you still helping people who need you?" The whole room went quiet, anticipating his response. Daniels got down beside her and replied, "Each and every day, Lily. And I always think about the girl who made me remember why it's important." It wasn't only a poignant moment. It was a lesson come full circle, because that one experience had altered Daniels' perception of his responsibility. It wasn't merely about keeping law or order. It was about hearing. Truly hearing. The world around him, to the cries that remain unheard, to the looks that beseech aid, to the voices that quake behind fear. From that point on, Daniels started instructing newcomers, not only in procedure and protocol. Your eyes and your heart, he would remind them, are your greatest assets. The faith wave of hope continued to spread, inspiring numerous others to step in when something did not feel right, to see when someone was in need. And as for Daniels, he kept Lily's drawing in his patrol car, hidden behind his badge, a reminder to him every day that heroes don't come from glory, but from awareness and sympathy. Sometimes a wave can turn a life, or even save one, around, in a world that races along too quickly, where eyes pass by but do not always see. An easy wave was the catalyst, which brought us all back to what's really important. Officer Daniels didn't set out to be a hero that day, and Lily had never imagined her simple act would transform her life. But fate has an insistent way of bringing hearts together at exactly the right moment. One act of trust crossed with one act of awareness. And they rewrote the rule book on what it means to care. Heroism doesn't always roar. It sometimes whispers, in the eyes of a frightened child and in the heart of one willing to hear. Lily and Officer Daniels' story continues, a viral video or a news headline, but as an eternal reminder. Be present, be kind, listen. You never know whose life is holding its breath for your moment of awareness. Whose silent scream will be heard because you halted, looked, and cared. The next time you're passing through a crowded street, or scrolling over a face that appears lost in the sea, keep this in mind: a single wave can save a life. And at other times, it's not the uniform, or the badge, or the power that makes a hero, but the heart that will see.